Hello everyone, this is Diane and I have three journals, finished journals to show you, and when you see this video they are already in my shop. They are made with children's books. Two are little golden books and one is a smaller Whitman Telltale book. So let's start with that one. And it's so cute. It's Little Red Riding Hood, and this is an old book. It's from 1957, I believe, or maybe it was from the 60s. Maybe I have the page in here that would tell us. So it's like 5.5 by 6.5 or something like that. And I just added a little bit of pom-pom trim to the bottom and used this really pretty red and daisy printed fabric on the spine and added some polka dot ribbon, grosgrain ribbon. I left the back as it is, and it has 3 signatures, and I will put the number, it's like 132 pages or something like that, front and back, but I'll put that in the listing. I left the end papers because they're so pretty, and on the inside is a yellow striped fabric and some pale blue trim. There is a flexible file folder for the spine and Tyvek and fabric, but it is flexible. The whole story is in this book, and it is in the center signature. I used a variety of scrapbook papers and lined paper, stationery, and there are quite a few vintage items in all 3 of these books, or maybe just in this one. I just finished this one, and I know there's vintage stuff in this one. So this is one of them. I don't know how old it is, but it is vintage, and it's a florist hang tag. I used a lot of red pieces, and that's a tuck spot. This came from a different children's book with Little Red Riding Hood, and I glued it to some coffee dyed paper. There's some trim there on the edge of the page. This is a clear photo sleeve, and I added this piece of German scrap. I don't think it's vintage. It doesn't seem very old, but I received that in a Happy Mail. And I also received this green tag in a Happy Mail, and I just stamped the corner stamp. This photo sleeve actually has 2 pockets, so the pocket itself and then behind the pocket is open. This is a guest book page and a piece of pretty scalloped stationery and some lined paper for children to learn to write. Here is a piece of scrapbook paper, a double-sided scrapbook paper from Stampin' Up, I believe, and I made this little pocket with a scrap and added a tab. And this is one of the cut-off pages from one of these journals. You can write on that. There's plenty of room, and then it just gets tucked in here. This is a vintage bridge score sheet. I had to cut off part of it so it would fit on the page. And then this is vintage embroidered ribbon. Another guest book page. And I made this pocket from a scrap of cardstock that I have, just stenciled a little bit on it and added a colored index card. And this is a word cluster that I made recently. I just added this piece that was cut from a book. Some ledger paper. This is gift wrap paper, and it was used. It's kind of crinkly. There's creases in it. But the book is Little Red Riding Hood, and this is a Little Red Bonnet Girl. So I put her in. And I added some ledger paper to the back. You could have written on the plain back of the gift wrap, but this makes it a little more sturdy. I have to glue the envelopes closed. I didn't glue them closed in any of these books. These are vintage white envelopes that I used some scraps of scrapbook paper to add some color to them. And this is a vintage, it's an image, it's a digital of vintage French flower seed labels. So I have these digitals in my shop. And I added this index card. I rounded the corners and put red ink around the edges, as I did on the envelope. And again, I added a cardstock with ledger lines on it to the back of the gift wrap. Here's a pocket that I made. It was in my stash. I pulled a lot of ephemera that I had created in other videos or other projects, and I had in my stash. I just went through and pulled things that would go well in these journals. So I used a lot of pockets like this, and I put the word brave on here. And these I've had in my digital file folders for a while, so I don't know where I got them, but it's Little Red Riding Hood and the Woodsman and the Wolf, little cutout figures. He actually looks like Kevin Costner from the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves movie from the, was it in the early 90s? So I just tucked them in the pocket. And here we have a bridge tally card with a red rose on it. You can open that up and write on there if you want to, but I made it a tuck spot. And in the tuck spot, I put this little tag that I made in a recent video, making ephemera. This little girl has a hood, so I thought she was perfect for the Little Red Riding Hood journals. And I have some little animal fabric ribbon, which is so cute. And I did not have any wolves, but I had some other woodland animals that she might encounter as she goes through the forest to visit Grandma. So this one is a little deer, and I put this little fabric pennant behind it. This is just a craft envelope, and it's just got a scrap piece of ledger cardstock you can write on, and this is a vintage sticker. And this is vintage. I'm not even sure where I got it. Maybe somebody sent it to me in Happy Mail. Maybe it's not vintage, I don't know. But it looks like it's stamped with that design, and then these little flowers are glued on. They're not sewn through the card. I'm not really sure how that was done, but they're really pretty and they're red, so I included that card in here. And then on this page, there is a vintage store receipt. Walter F. Chaffee. It's a hardware store, Ulster, Pennsylvania. And another vintage flower seal. I'm not sure if they are Denison. I know there are some Denison flower seals in here. Second signature. This is the signature that has all of the story pages. So I didn't do a lot of embellishing. This is a thinner signature. It's got story pages and it's got a few journaling pages. Again, we have the florist hang tag, and there's a flashcard in there. So in between some of the pages, I put some pages for journaling on. It's another flower sticker. This one is a Denison. There's a word cluster up there. It says fabulous. Another Denison flower sticker. And there's one also. This is a red and white polka dot bag that I cut apart. I think somebody sent me something in a Happy Mail. And I added another of those hardware receipts, and this one is printed in red. And there's a strip of blue gingham bias tape there. Again, I have to seal this envelope closed, but it has a little cherry gift card that came with some cherry gift wrap from Current tucked into the envelope. This one has a little pocket, and these are both, the pocket and the card are made with scraps. And I just realized this page was put in upside down, but you can write on it. no problem at all. And there's another little forest animal. This one is a fox. And a bridge score sheet. Third signature, again, has the florist hang tag in the front and another hardware store receipt tucked in there. And a photo sleeve with a piece of German scrap and a tag. This is from a vintage photo album page, so you can see how discolored it is. It doesn't matter which pocket you put that in. Again, the yellow scalloped stationery and another short page with a pocket and a tab. And I just included a couple of my Golden Book Eloise Wilkin cards from her Mother Goose book illustrations. Bridge score sheet. This is another printable that I've had in my digital files for a long time. And another flashcard. This one I glued paper to the back so it can be journaled on. You can do that with your other flashcards if you'd like. This one says Giggle. And there's just another little piece of German scrap. This pretty little girl with a flower dress. And this card, or this envelope, has a categories card, which I sewed to a scrapbook paper so you can journal on the back. And there's a journaling card on the back of the envelope. Another bridge tally card, and a playing card, and then this ephemera piece from one of my digitals. And another of the pockets that was in my stash. The colors went well with this book, and there's a digital journaling card in there and a little tag that I made. And then the last little critter is a bear. There's a little envelope here, and it just has a piece of ledger cardstock from Prima in there. And I got this in a Happy Mail recently. It's made with Edith Holden book page. I think that's probably napkin. And this is a piece of fabric that I had. I sold a lot of that in bundles. So I'm thinking the giver of this Happy Mail bought one of my bundles because it's a vintage fabric. And there we have another bridge score sheet and a piece of German scrap. Maybe that is Red Riding Hood's basket that she was going to fill up with food to take to Grandma, and the cat is trying to get in it. And it's just tied with a white seam binding ribbon. Then the other two books are the regular Golden Book size, and this is Two Little Gardeners. And I love the patchwork quilt pieces on the spines of these two journals. And I like to do collages on the backs of the Golden Book journals. I used a paper doll, and this is a vintage vegetable seed packet. That's the real thing. It's not a digital, because they're planting a vegetable garden. And here is a bead dangle. Butterflies and flowers, another pretty shiny beads. I thought they were appropriate for a garden book. I covered up a sticky spot right here with a piece of the vintage quilt and scrap of another fabric ribbon and some fabric along the side. There's a book plate that I made. And on the inside, the fabric has fruit depicted on it. I had a lot of fun making these journals and using images from children's books and finding gardening and vegetable and flower images, and also some bunny images for the other book. This is, I think it's from the Old Design Shop, a set of flashcards that have gardening words. And this one says sunshine. And this little girl sitting here in the garden with her little fan came out of a really old children's book. And just an alterations tag that I Mod Podged with a vegetable garden themed napkin. It's got this pretty vintage green trim on the edge. I did some stenciling on the white pages on these two journals, and this came from a children's book. I only used one spread in each signature, so I just chose the ones that had the pretty, I liked the pictures on the ones that I chose, and I put them together with a hinge. Some journaling cards or pages. This is from a vintage, very vintage hardware book list. It was hardcover, but it had these pages in it for people to make lists on, or the store owner to write down receipts and who owes what or whatever. There is a little glassine bag with a piece of that napkin, and I just put this skinny little tag inside there. This came from a children's book, and it's glued to vintage music score sheet. This is from a gardening binder book, and I just put this jewelry or layaway envelope, Mod Podge some pieces from the napkin onto it and put it over here, and it's just got a piece of green cardstock in there that you can write on. And I used a triangle paper clip. This is gift wrap, and someone sent me in a Happy Mail these really cool napkins. So this one is corn, and I just glued it to some cardstock, made it a pocket, and just tucked this card in there. This was also in my stash, just a quick and easy, take a scrap of paper and sew 3 circles to it, punched from scraps. Here is a snippet trim that I made with scraps of paper and little bits of the napkin. I did a video on those. And this is from a vintage book about planting things. I think there's a picture on the other side of it. A fabric flip that I already had in my stash with some flowers and birds and some vintage tatting up there. And I made envelopes for these 2 journals out of children's books. So again, I have to glue them closed. And this is just a scrap of the vintage photo album. You can see the coloration on there. And I glued a piece of the napkin, and this is a quote from this book. And it says, "And the vegetables grew, and they grew, and they grew." And I just added a little scrap up there. There's some stamping here along with the stenciling. A glassine bag with a napkin and one of the green tags. And this is a vintage label for canning. It says tomato. This is just a postcard from Little Golden Books, and it says make something from nothing, and that's kind of what we're doing when we're planting in a garden. There's that book page that has an apple on that side and a peach on that side. This is just a flip made with an image from this Little Golden Book. Just a really cute image, and I glued it to a scrap of paper. You can flip it up, it's on a hinge, and you can write underneath there. Another image from a children's book. This is a Rita Donnelly flip. You can write on that. I glued some lace there, and there's another flashcard from the old design shop, and this really beautiful image of two children planting something. They're digging in with their spades. And then I made this little journal card with a vintage French vegetable seed packet label. It's a lot of words. And this is cut from a book of words, or a dictionary, and it's salad. And here is just a strip of sari silk with some bits of fabric sewn on it, including one of the vegetable fabric pieces. And this is part of the book page, the text from this book about how the garden was growing. I put in a florist hang tag and another flashcard. Here they are taking care of all the vegetables that they grew. They cooked and they cooked and they cooked and they cooked. Pumpkins and potatoes and parsley, corn and cabbage and beans until everything was cooked. Very industrious children. There's another pocket that was in my stash. And one of the Eloise Wilkin cards. Here, I didn't put a pocket on this. All the other signatures in the front have a pocket, but this one had this pretty design here, and I didn't want to cover it. So I just gave you a flashcard and some vintage lace doilies, or daisies, and some vintage trim here. This image cut from a vintage children's book. Here's a glassine bag. I use these fun stamps that I have. There's butterfly and hummingbird, and I don't remember what else, but if you look at the image, you will see other images within it. So you can see butterfly right here as the hummingbird's wings, and his head is a butterfly, and on the tail is a butterfly and flowers. It's really fun to look at them. This is a large piece of German scrap right there, and I just put it on a scrapbook paper and glued it on as a pocket, and I included this little golden book card from a Go Fish game, and it's got the little red hen with her spade ready to start digging. And here's another napkin piece. I didn't put anything in there, and that's a little tuck spot. Another paper snippet trim. Here's from that vintage book. It has some garden tools. You see just the handles here. There's a fabric flip. And this card has another image from a vintage children's book. This is, I think that was cut from a children's book. And some vintage music paper. This one says peas. There's the gardening tools. Another of the book image flips. The little girl enjoying a tomato that she picked from her plants. This is actually a weed. It came from a children's book, and we do have to deal with weeds when we're planting gardens. Another of the layaway envelopes. Here's a ladybug. You can see a dragonfly right here. And another flip with a flashcard and another vegetable seed packet for radishes, and this one opens this way. More fabric. Here's a vintage flashcard that says rake. Some more little printable flashcards and a tulip. It does have tulips on it. It's a florist hang tag. And another pocket has baskets of produce on it and a card, vintage game card that has an ear of corn. And then the third signature has a tulip from an old children's book and a flashcard there and a tag that was in my stash with birds on it. This is cut from a children's book. And here is a dragonfly, and it has a fairy right in here. And there's birds on the wings. Another German scrap piece on this pocket and a tag that's been Mod Podged with napkin. This beautiful gift wrap with the cute little animals and all the foliage. And a paper snippet trim. Fabric flip. There's another weed. This one says corn. And this came from this book, and it was a little song at the end of the book called Full as a Fiddle. And I didn't cover the back. You can put something on there if you want a journal, but this was the end of the book, and I liked what it said there. They're sitting there singing a little song while they rest. Even the dog is singing with them. It's a cute little story. And the final book image flip. Some more flowers cut from a children's book. And another layaway tag or envelope, and this one has pretty flowers on it. I just put a categories card in there. It's got my signature on the back, and I didn't put anything in this little pocket, so I'll have to try to find something that I can put in there. This one is called Two Little Gardeners. It has a white seam binding that I dragged across orange stamp pad, and it stays on ink, so it shouldn't come off on your hands. And then we have the Rabbit's Adventure. It has a purple seam binding ribbon. The title is in purple, and there is some purple in the quilt piece and lavender on the rickrack. There's a collage here with another paper doll and a piece of napkin with a rabbit. On this one, I included this bunny bell charm and a little piece of ombre or variegated seam binding. Somebody sent me this bunny in a Happy Mail. I think I got this one in a Happy Mail too. It's a little button, and what I did was I punched a hole in the cover and just squeezed that button in there, put some crystal effects on it to make, or glossy accents, to hold it in place. And it doesn't do anything. It's just a cute little tab there on the front. Very vintage button. This is from a vintage handkerchief, and I carefully used my fabric scissors and cut him out and glued it down, and his tail, or his, that's not his tail, that's his foot. His foot has a hole in it, but it's there. That's how the handkerchief came. And I used some quotes, some of the text from a book about farm animals in this book. And this says, "Children like to have rabbits for pets." And I love this illustration from a children's book. And again, I used napkins to Mod Podge on tags and little glassine bags. Here we have a transparent card with an R on it, R for rabbit, and there's a little tag, which I'm not sure where it came from. Might have been in some gift wrap, or somebody might have sent that to me in Happy Mail. But it's cute. So the little glassine bags have this cute little bunny on all of the little ones. There's a, oh, this stencil has a tree and a rabbit. There's a page from a children's songbook called Rabbit in the Hole, and I added this adorable image from a children's book. This layaway envelope has one of the lettuce seed packet images from the napkin because rabbits eat lettuce, and then there's a rabbit. This is a place card. I think I got these cards at Target. There's some with carrots and some with bunnies. And I just sewed that on as a little tuck spot, and I included these little pages from miniature Beatrix Potter books, and there is space for writing on them. Of course, they have rabbits on them. There's a little rabbit I cut from a book, and I used some stamps. This is a little note card. There's a mama rabbit with a basket of flowers and 2 little bunnies. And there's some of that little critter fabric ribbon that I had that had some bunnies, and I had sewn them to fabric flips, and this was a perfect way to use them. That's adorable. And on this tag is illustration of a rabbit, and it says rabbits have soft fur. I love this little bunny. I've had that stamp for a very long time. Here's a Richard Scarry bunny that is watering her garden with a watering can. There's a rabbit here. And this part of the stencil has a goose on it, or a duck. I think it's a duck. There's a flip. And then I made these collage cards in a video, an ephemera video, and it's got a rabbit cut from an old book, and these images are cut from an old book. There's another bunny on that fabric cluster, or strip there. Definition of a rabbit from a children's book. Little collaged tag and a digital. Here's one of my pockets. This one has a playing card of a old painting of a little boy with a rabbit, and it says "Boy with Rabbit" on it. And this was cut from a children's book. Second signature has some more Richard Scarry rabbits and a tag that I made. Some Beatrix Potter text and pictures. It's another little bunny stamp. And I cut this from a children's playing card. It has a bunny on it. I just punched it with a punch. And it says here, "He was a pretty fellow." This is a post-a-note, fold-a-note with rabbits on it. And just a pretty fabric flip here. A little golden book card with the little rabbits. Their ears are long. This is from a children's book. It says the bunny that had the thimble, and the thimble on the bunny's ear. This was a little piece of German scrap that little bunny had, and I punched this out of a scrap of paper and cut this from a children's book and just put them all together there. Wallpaper tag and a scrap of decorated cardstock, and this image came from a book. And the final signature has this beautiful photograph of a rabbit from an old book, and that's where most of the bunny quotes came from. the description of rabbits with their soft fur and long ears, and children like them for pets, etc. And there's another wallpaper tag with a little rabbit from a children's book. You find lots of rabbits in children's books. And I meant to put this in the first signature, as the first signature, but it didn't happen that way. But it's only got one, isn't that cute? One spread in each signature, so it doesn't have the complete book. This is from 1977. So the birds in the nest is cut from a children's book. There's a little greeting card with some bunnies on it. There's another bunny fabric flip. Beatrix Potter and a Golden Book postcard with a couple of rabbits playing with the dog and the cats. This is not a pocket, it's just an image glued on there to cover up what was printed at the bottom of that card. And this is a paperback cover from one of the Little Peter Rabbit books, the Beatrix Potter books, and it's another flip. There's the other name card, place card. I just paper clipped it on. This has a vintage daisy trim glued on there. I love that little image, it's so cute. And their funny little noses keep moving all the time, it says up there. And I cut this from an old children's book. Really beautiful images in that book, and I just loved that rabbit. And another pocket that I made with a matching tag, all made out of scraps. And there's a pocket on the back cover with this little image and a Scattergories card. It's got, oh, it doesn't have my signature. Guess I'll have to put my signature on this piece. So these should be in my shop right now. The Rabbit's Adventure, Two Little Gardeners, and Little Red Riding Hood. Thank you for watching. I know this was a long flip through, but I appreciate your patience. I hope you stuck it out. And I will see you in the next video. Have a creative day today. Bye-bye.